Hello, everyone. This is Jim Haviland, and this is Weekly Impact from the Lay of the Land. It is 17 September 2024. It's been a long time. And yes, as I'm saying, we're here in the ILC. Kris, how you doing today?
Jim, I'm doing great, man.
I didn't do the intro right.
No.
This isn't our job. This is our part-time. Okay, so great episode to talk about this week. We got Laura Bennett and Alex Krooglik. Alex, I am sorry, man.
Yeah, no, you should apologize.
Jeffrey could take care of us and actually say these things
He could.
on the show. So, but anyway, because he's right there, you get it right. But so this is episode 183, Kris, and this is a good one because we talk a lot about these early stage builders, but this is one where we get the full arc of the story, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, and for me, I just remember back to these early stages of Jumpstart.
Yeah.
And one of our other good friends, Gabe Torok,
right,
with Preemptive, was one of the other ones, and I believe they shared office space. Like,
oh, is that right?
I just remember walking into his office and seeing Embrace Insurance on there. But I might be wrong, but I'm pretty certain they did. It's part of that whole thing.
All right. And so let's Embrace Insurance, pet insurance.
Yep.
And now it seems like, duh, of course you'd do it. But it was hard because this was when the internet was hard, when you're still putting servers online. We remember that.
Closets with fans in the room. I mean, it was
like, you're just hacking this stuff
these
together.
Kids, they'll never know, Jim. They'll never know what that was like.
Walking uphill to school both ways. Yeah. And insurance was hard. I mean, I think it's very interesting to hear the technical details behind having to get a regulated industry right. And I'd love to get they got into the details there. But also they went through some very real things, like just very much like you and I did with 2008, 2009 being like an entirely different. The problem with having a dynamic market, Kris, is that suddenly a lot of people get wiped out who didn't do anything wrong.
Right. Well, and those turns happen, and I think if in a 10-year time span, this whether we buy in or not, like you're going to have 2 great years.
Yes.
Right. You're going to have 2 terrible years. And you're going to have 4 okay years. And if you buy into that cycle at all, it's really hard to know what year you're in. Right. Like this could be the okay year. So maybe this is one of the terrible years.
Going into annuals, I've been studying the turnings, the 4 turnings model of, long lifespans being a set of turnings, and we're in the 4th turning right now by most people because no one trusts anything, and we're about to face disaster. But being able to use it as a planning model, because if it's just part of we can talk about whys, but if it's just part of human history, and we've been able to map it out for a long time, just go with it, bro.
Yeah,
because I tell my clients, you have to, is it going to be a recession? Yes. Do I know when? I do not. So you just have to make sure you're building resilience into yourself so that you can survive that recession. So some of the things I liked about this episode, I love the fact that, this is true of MBA students, not for subject matter experts, these founders. They did the market research first, Kris.
Right. Because we love that story, right?
Yes.
Like any college experience where you go, 2 people decide 4. I think there's 4 people total when they were doing the project
for their MBA program at Wharton.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Pretty good school.
I think they do well mostly. But at the end of the day, it's like they just let it lie. Right. Like they decided there was a there through all the research they did, and decided that they were going to do the hard work of founding, and also both not being U.S. citizens at the time was interesting, right? As part of that work and figuring out how to make all that come together. And then telling the story as part of that extension coming out of school, like how they accidentally land in Cleveland, and hats off to Progressive Insurance. I think they both have ties there. And
this is part of like when I was in the Triangle and Research Triangle Park in North Carolina, that was the thought there, that if they had all these giant companies there, if they gave them free space, one, they'd keep all of the PhDs that they were all minting with all those schools around there, but also they would attract people that would settle there and then go build other businesses. I mean, it took them a long time to get to that model, right? So the lesson of that was it took a whole generation of people doing their jobs before their kids went off to college, and then they started being able to create entrepreneurial success.
Yeah,
that was the interesting part of that model. It didn't happen automatically, because you have to have in your area, you have to see that this actually is happening. And we haven't had that many unicorns. So, but Let's start that flywheel turning, Kris.
Because you have to have that 10, 20, 30-year outlook, right? At least. And
that's
how
it.
You're developing those
next
level of leaders and entrepreneurs and people who are okay taking the risk for it.
Yeah, because being crazy isn't a good model for building a business. It's like being, seeing something. And I like that they were passionate about, they saw something in this. I think there's something here and they want to go after it. That's a great model, as opposed to just like, I think the world should be like this and I'm going to burn rubber to get there.
Yep.
I call this the kill the dog moment too. I like this one. One of my most recent famous favorite sayings that I learned from TikTok was data over dogma. Go look it up. There's a great podcaster who does a lot of work on this, but it has nothing to do with business. But it works. But it works for so many people because we do have these dogmatic beliefs about ourselves and whether we're normal or whether we're the mean.
Right.
And I know I'm not the mean. I'm my own little weird self, and I need to look at the data. What does the data tell me about where the market is and what's opportunity? Because they heard a lot. Go kill the dog.
Well, and there's just an inherent bias in ourselves, right? And so even I remember back going to them when Jumpstart funded them, I'm like, pet insurance? Like I didn't own a pet, right? Like, right. So I couldn't relate to that. So you're right. If you would have asked me not being a pet owner, would I kill the dog or pay $1,500 or $10,000? I would have said, yeah, I think you should kill the dog.
Well, and that's the thing. Just we have to recognize that bias and go look for the data. It's like, right. Oh, you believe in this, huh? Be curious about that. Don't, because it's easy to say no.
Well, and I think most of the time that we look back on investments we should have made, we should have understood better. It's because we didn't know. We didn't have the data, right? We couldn't.
Yeah, don't go into shit you don't know. But definitely, if you're in the position of making a decision, be curious.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I think that
Coach Lasso says, be curious. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. All right. And the last one here is, they're talking about that 2008, 2009 period, this responsibility of investors and how that kind of help propel them forward. We have to solve this because we've convinced all these people that we're doing this, and it's not just the investors, but everyone that's working with you and have taken shares. And we want to do right by all the people that have trusted us.
Yeah, and because we're both big fans of Simon Sinek and the Infinite Game, you either run out of the will or the resource to play the game.
Right.
Part of the will is the people that you're trying to honor and respect, that believed in you, that gave you hard-earned dollars right at the initial investment side. Yeah. And they talked about being minority shareholders, right?
Yeah.
Like because they raised money early, because they did what they did along the way.
Lesson learned,
right? Now you're a minority shareholder and you look at the calculation, the math in the whole thing, and you're like, at some point you're going to exit stage left, which they did, and let the thing run, because it's not, they probably could have made more money year over year, because they could. Right?
Yeah. Laura points it out, but they might have made other decisions, knowing what they know now, because they eventually did hit the hockey stick.
Yeah.
Right. They had a model with the hockey stick that, like, this is what it could be. The timing is always the hardest part about that. I built 3 of my reverse income statement models over the last 2 weeks for people, and it's like timing on that is like, you make a lot of assumptions about when you that's going to actually hit, and you can be wrong.
Well, and just for those listeners out there that haven't experienced what they experienced, there's 2 factors to this. One, it is the total amount of equity that you own at the class that you own it.
Yeah.
Right. Like so. Yes. You could be the largest common shareholder, but the pref stack is on top of you, eating away at it all the time.
Right.
And because you control a class, that's good, but it doesn't mean the end result is actually going to pay you out the way you think it's going to pay out.
And Kris, in both of our lives, how often have prefs completely changed the game? And prefs, we should say, for people who don't know, these are, you have, when you're an investor, some classes have preferential access to whatever happens, including voting rights or how they get paid out.
It can accrue an interest rate that's non-cash based, but it pays out at the time of liquidity. And there's a waterfall effect. And, being good at understanding that is something that most of the time, and I remember this in my early days all the way aging myself, Jim, back to the .com days,
Yeah.
didn't understand when we took VC money, how all that worked.
Same. Blown that toe off. Don't do it, my friends. Right. Before you take the money, go understand the prefs and find a mentor. Call us. We'll tell you about it. Where all the things you get wrong. All right. So great show for those people that want to see the full arc of things. And Kris, the last thing I want to point out is they had very similar timeline to our Vox Mobile story.
100%. But I do actually want to reach out to Laura and Alex now, because they didn't say, and Jeffrey didn't ask, what are they working on?
Yeah, I know.
What are they doing now? Right. So I got to reach out, and I got to give a shout out, because you used to at one point live in Chagrin Falls. I live in Chagrin Falls.
Yep.
They talked about the Starbucks, the coffee shop, the whole 9
How many meetings have you had there?
Yeah, too many.
Yeah.
Right. So anyways, but I'm going to reach out and just see what they're working on.
Yeah. It's a great little spot. If you're especially on the east side, if you haven't been out there and just hung out there, it's a good spot to free your mind. Okay. So Kris, so the two things I wanted to talk about from that episode that are really lean into our coaching practice and how we help people. But it's finding the right partner. That's like, if only there was a way to find the right partner. And there are a handful of ways that you can be more predictive about finding the right partner. I can't guarantee you're going to fall in love, and do a great job. And they didn't fall in love. They're married to other people, but they found that good relationship for working, and that is important. But we certainly, with EOS, we've both been EOS implementers, the visionary implementer pair. That's a great genius moment from Gino Wickman.
Yeah, because and by the way, I think as a thesis of investing, I'm down with this now, because a solopreneur, it's really hard to build and scale without that other partner. And coaching companies at this point, 50 plus, the ones that really have momentum there's a partnership, right? And so that's that visionary integrator. The integrator is actually good at follow through and details and getting everything the visionary, and they play off of each other. They don't bring the baggage to the whole leadership team. That's an important part.
You prove that you already understand that you're not going to build this alone, that it's not just about you, and you have to be willing to compromise, right? So these are all leadership qualities that you have to have. So if you're a solo, there's a good chance you're missing some of that stuff.
Well, and there's the trust and respect, right? And they did tell the story a little bit about mom and dad fighting at work and being right. That does happen along the way, because it will feel that way,
right?
Especially if it's probably male, female, but even if it's male, there's still a squabble that happened, and the people will.
It's a very real thing. We see it in lots of dual founder or even 3-founder like companies. I actually have told many companies that I've coached, you have a mommy daddy problem,
right?
Because you're gonna you get a no here, you're gonna go over there, and you just have, and as that partnership, you have to recognize it's going to happen and just be listening for it. Right. And not let it happen. Like, we are a united front. That's what, that's the most important part about, I think, from Gino, is that we're a united front in front of everybody else. We don't fight in front of everybody else. We can disagree respectfully. We're going to have to demonstrate the right behaviors of how we're going to work together as a company. But we don't let everyone work around us.
And for those listening, there's a book called Rocket Fuel, which is part of the EOS Traction Library.
Yep.
There's a quick assessment that will help you understand which one are you. Are you more the integrator operator, or are you more the visionary in that moment? I think it's probably not science-based. It's also just a good lens to look through.
Yeah, it's a model. It's useful, not accurate. So, but there are some. I have one that's equally not accurate. I always in my teams I ask the question, it's the Microsoft Office question. Who solves problems with PowerPoint? Who solves problems with Word? Who solves problems with spreadsheets? You need to have all three covered.
Right.
So, because you're going to be in trouble, especially if you don't have anyone that does anything with spreadsheets, which I've seen plenty. It's like, oh, we're going to meander our way through this. Like, someone's got to write down some numbers. Profiling, we all like Colby, Myers-Briggs. We've seen that used quite a bit. I know at 90 early on, we realized they had too many NTs in the group, which is a common problem with startups. And culture index, hardest one to understand, but these are all good tools to use to figure out whether you've got a good compatibility solution.
Yeah, and one of my favorite parts about like Colby and these things is when you get done taking those assessments, it says you're 100% right.
Right.
Because you are.
You always, you're absolutely right.
Like
you're perfect the way you are. Just know what it is.
That's
just
right.
Embrace it. The last thing I want to say about it is the core values. Great call out from Alex that, so they have that operating system. Yes, Virginia, you have an operating system. And the thing that they did right is they developed strong core values and stuck to them. And Alex, gave props to Laura for really leaning into that. It's critical. And if you don't share core values, you're not going to work well together. And it isn't like either of you are bad people or wrong. It's just you need to have that kind of consistency of communication that comes from having people that know who you are and understand you.
Yeah. Well, and this is how we hire. This is how we retain. This is how we promote. This is how we transition out.
Yep.
Like those core values, especially if you can, if they land well enough that you feel the emotionality of the core values, right? Like and we do in the EOS world, we talk about having a core value speech. Right. And it's not I have a planned speech. It is I have a dream speech, right? Yep. It is that emotional moment where you get it, right? And 3 to 5 is enough, and then people go, "Yes, that's me too." Versus, I'm not sure if this is the right place for me. And if you're not sure, then it's not. Otherwise, it should land.
My version of right people, right seats, of course, is the hell yes people, only hell yes people, and I teach people to your core values. Telling them about your core values in the interview. You tell them about it, and you say it's just like taking them to church. It's like, this is what we believe. This is what we feel deeply. If you don't feel deeply about these things, you're going to stand out. It's not going to go well for either of us. So if I say something and you're like, I don't get that, just know that you're not a bad person. You're just probably not going to be you're never going to be an A player here.
Right.
Is the problem.
There's other places for you to be.
All right, Chris. So let's talk about, so you did another podcast this week.
I did. Yeah. It was Marketing Moves, which is Vivid Front's podcast.
Andrew Spott.
Yeah, Andrew Spott. Yep. Mm-hmm. Great studio, Jim. I was jealous, to be honest. They figured out sound inside. Hopefully ours is coming across okay. But
go check out and it looks good.
It looks great. Yeah. And I think they're actually leveraging it as an offering as part of what they do as a marketing agency, right? Helping promote their customers. They're also trying to tell the stories of entrepreneurs, small, medium-sized business owners, right, making it all happen inside Northeast Ohio. So felt really good to be on there. And I got to talk about, my journey, but also what the work we're doing at 90. They run on EOS powered by 90, which is fun to talk to as well.
Perfect. Yeah. I mean, they're good folks. I love Andrew. We've had great conversations, and I'm excited that they're when we talk about building community, Chris, the Venn diagram of all the little circles we've got out there and bringing them together and having the crossover in the Venn, that's when the magic happens.
Yep. 100%.
All right. Chris, we got everything else we got to cover this week?
I think we got weekly impact done.
All right. Chris, have a great week, man.
You do the same, Jim.
Okay.